Somewhere between you agreeing to buy that car and signing the finance paperwork, the dealership quietly added money to your interest rate. Not fees, not add-ons. The interest rate itself. A lender told them what you actually qualified for. They didn't tell you that number, they told you a higher one, and they kept the difference every single month for the entire loan. It's completely legal. It has a name in the industry, and unless you know to ask a very specific question, you will never find out it happened to you. So in this video, we're going to reverse engineer exactly how that markup gets built into your monthly payment, run the real math on what it costs over a full loan term, and cover the other 4 ways people pay for a car, so you know which one actually saves you the most money and which ones are quietly designed to cost you more while feeling cheaper. Before we get into the markup, let's lay out the actual menu of options you have when you're standing in that dealership, because most people only ever seriously consider two of them. The first is the one almost everyone defaults to without thinking, which is dealer-arranged financing. You sit down with the finance manager, you fill out an application, and within a few minutes you're told what rate you qualify for. It feels instant, it feels convenient, and it feels like the only path available to you in that room. That convenience is real. What's not always disclosed is how that rate got built. The second option is a personal loan that has nothing to do with the dealership at all. You go to your bank or your credit union, sometimes days before you ever set foot on a lot, and you get pre-approved for a fixed amount at a fixed rate. Then you walk into the dealership as a cash buyer in every way that matters. You're not asking them for financing, you already have it. All that's left to negotiate is the price of the car itself. The third option is leasing. Instead of buying the car, you're paying for the amount it's expected to lose in value while it's in your driveway. Plus a financing charge on top called a money factor, which functions exactly like an interest rate even though it's dressed up with a different name. Your payments are almost always lower than a loan on the same car. And at the end of the term, you hand the keys back and walk away. Or you can buy the car for its predetermined value if you've fallen in love with it. There's a fourth structure worth knowing exists even if it's less common here, where your payments are calculated mostly on depreciation like a lease. But you're technically financing the car and there's a large final payment due if you want to keep it. It shows up occasionally as a low payment loan option, and the trap is the same one leasing has, a small monthly number that hides a large obligation waiting at the end. And the fifth option is the simplest one on paper. You pay for the car outright. No monthly payment, no interest, no finance office conversation at all. You hand over the money once, and you own the car free and clear from day one. 5 paths. 4 of them get talked about openly. The one that almost never comes up on its own is the second one, the personal loan you arrange yourself, because there's genuinely nothing in it for the dealership if you show up already financed. That absence of a sales pitch is itself a piece of information worth paying attention to. It's worth sitting with that for a second, because it means the one option most likely to save you money is also the one option nobody in that building is incentivized to bring up. If you want it on the table, you're the one who has to put it there. Here's the thing about walking into a dealership. Almost every question you get asked is designed, whether the person asking realizes it or not, to steer the conversation toward one single number, your monthly payment. What can you afford a month? What are you paying now a month? Let's see if we can get you into this a month. The monthly payment is an incredibly easy number to manipulate without technically lying to you once. You can lower it by stretching the term. You can lower it by rolling in fees you never noticed. You can lower it by quietly raising the interest rate and adding a few more months to absorb the difference. None of that shows up as a lie. It shows up as a smaller number on a screen that you nod along to. And it works because right now, more than a third of new vehicle loans in this country stretch past 6 years. Not because 6 years of payments is what anyone actually wants, because 6 years makes the monthly number small enough to say yes to. Here's what that actually costs. Take the same loan amount, the same interest rate, and just change the term from 3 years to 6. Your monthly payment drops by close to $474. That feels like a win. It feels like you just found a much more affordable car, but the total interest you pay across the life of that loan more than doubles, adding close to $4,861 that simply wasn't there before. You didn't get a cheaper car. You got a more expensive car wearing a cheaper monthly costume. This is why the monthly payment on its own tells you almost nothing about whether you're making a good decision. It tells you what leaves your account each month. It says nothing about what the car is actually costing you to own, and it says nothing about who's benefiting from the shape of that number. Now let's get into the part almost nobody explains clearly, because it's the one piece of this entire process that happens quietly, on paper you don't usually see, using a number you're never shown. When a dealership arranges your financing, they don't lend you the money themselves. They submit your application to a lender, sometimes several lenders at once, and each one comes back with what's called a buy rate. That buy rate is the actual interest rate you qualify for based on your credit, your income, and the loan itself. It is the real number. It is the number a bank or a credit union would give you directly if you'd gone to them first. The dealership is not required to tell you that number, and in the finance office, they generally don't. Instead, they add a markup on top of it, typically somewhere between 1 and 2.5 percentage points, and that higher number is what gets presented to you as your rate. The difference between what the lender actually offered and what you're quoted is called dealer reserve, and the dealership keeps it for the life of the loan as compensation for arranging the financing you didn't know had a hidden floor underneath it. Picture how that conversation actually unfolds. Someone sits across from a finance manager after already agreeing on a price for the car. They're tired, they're relieved the hard part is over, and the finance manager slides across a rate. There's no buy rate written anywhere on that paperwork. There's no line that says, here is what the bank actually offered us for you. There's just the number you're being asked to sign for, presented as though it's simply what your credit qualifies for, full stop. The only way this markup gets exposed is if you walk in already holding a competing offer. If you've been pre-approved by your own bank or credit union beforehand, you have a real number to hold the dealer's number against. If their financing beats your pre-approval, you take it. If it doesn't, you use the loan you already arranged. Either way, the moment you have your own financing lined up, the entire conversation changes because now you're not asking them what you qualify for. You already know. You're just seeing whether they can do better. Picture it playing out. Someone will call the customer, has just spent 40 minutes negotiating the price of the car down to a number they're happy with. They're relieved, they're ready to be done. They get walked back to the finance manager's office, and the finance manager, professional, friendly, unhurried, slides a printed offer across the desk. 6.9%, it says. The customer has no idea that the lender actually approved them at 4.9, and that the 2 points sitting on top of that are pure markup, invisible on the page, invented nowhere but present in every payment they'll make for the next several years. The finance manager isn't lying. 6.9% is technically the rate being offered. It's just not the rate that exists. Nobody in that room is going to volunteer the difference because volunteering it means giving away money that would otherwise quietly become theirs. That's the mechanism. It's not a scam in the legal sense. It's a fully disclosed practice that simply relies on almost nobody asking the one question that would unwind it, which is, what's the buy rate and can I see it? Let's put a real number on what that markup costs, using an actual car and actual rates rather than round, made-up figures. Take a 2026 Toyota Camry XLE. With the destination charge included, the sticker price comes to $35,195. Once you add a realistic average sales tax and title and registration fees, you're looking at an out-the-door price of roughly $38,159. That's the number every one of these paths has to work against. For context, that's not far off the national average new car loan amount right now, which sits above $42,000. So this isn't a cherry-picked example built to make the math dramatic. It's close to what a typical new car buyer is actually financing today. Say you put 10% down, about $3,816, leaving $34,343 to finance over 3 years, the same length as a typical lease term. So we're comparing everything on equal footing. Finance that through the dealership, with the market average new car rate of 6.39% marked up by a typical 2 points of dealer reserve, and you're paying 8.39%. That works out to a monthly payment of $1,082 and $4,622 in total interest over the 3 years. Walk in with a credit union loan you arranged yourself at 5.75% instead, and your payment drops slightly to $1,041 a month, with total interest of $3,129. Same car, same price, same down payment. The only thing that changed is who you asked first. And that one decision, asking your own bank before you ever sat down with a finance manager, saved $1,493 for making a phone call. Now let's bring leasing into the comparison. The current average lease on this exact car runs $443 a month, with $2,000 due at signing. Over 3 years, that's a total cash outlay of $17,948. That's dramatically less than either loan on a monthly basis, which is exactly why leasing looks like the obvious winner if you stop the analysis there. But a Camry holds its value unusually well. After 3 years, it's expected to retain about 78.6% of its sticker price, which puts the resale value at roughly $27,663. If you bought the car, whichever way you financed it, that resale value comes back to you. If you leased it, you hand the keys back, and that value disappears because you never owned any of it. Subtract that resale value from what each path actually cost, and the picture flips completely. Paying cash nets out at around $10,496 over 3 years. The credit union loan nets out at about $13,625. The dealer arranged loan, markup and all, nets out at $15,118. And leasing, despite having by far the smallest monthly payment, comes out the most expensive of all four, at $17,948 because there's no asset waiting for you at the end to offset any of it. That's the trap hiding inside the monthly payment. The option that felt cheapest every single month was, over 3 years, the most expensive option on the table. And that's before factoring in mileage caps, wear and tear charges at turn-in, and the fact that at the end of it, you're starting the entire payment cycle over again from zero. There's one objection worth addressing directly, because it's the one people bring up whenever cash comes out looking like the winner. If paying cash is the cheapest option, wouldn't it be smarter to finance the car instead and invest the difference somewhere that earns more than the loan costs you? In theory, if your investment return is higher than your interest rate, you come out ahead. That gap even has a name: arbitrage. Your money earns more than it costs you to borrow, and the spread is yours. In practice, this is a much shakier bet than it sounds for two reasons. First, your loan rate is locked and guaranteed. You know exactly what it costs you to the penny for the entire term. The stock market offers no such guarantee, especially over a window as short as 3 years, where a bad stretch can easily wipe out any rate advantage you were counting on. You'd be weighing a fixed, certain cost against a genuinely unpredictable return. And treating that as a clean, safe trade is misleading yourself about the risk involved. Second, and more honestly, there's a difference between what you should do with that leftover cash and what actually happens to it. In theory, you invest it and leave it alone for years. In practice, for most people, it quietly gets absorbed into everyday spending long before it has the chance to grow into anything. The math only works if the discipline holds, and the discipline is the harder part by far. So before you decide how you're going to pay for your next car, there are 4 questions worth running through honestly. First, are you actually focused on the right number? If a salesperson can move you from a car you budgeted for into a more expensive one just by describing the difference as a few extra dollars a month, you're being sold on the payment instead of the price. And that's exactly the dynamic that keeps loan terms creeping longer every year. Second, how important is driving something new to you? Honestly. If you're someone who trades in every few years anyway and values the lower stress of never dealing with major repairs, leasing isn't irrational. It's just a preference you should choose consciously rather than default into because the monthly number looked smaller. If you tend to hold onto a car for a decade, buying almost always wins by a wide margin because you're spreading that early depreciation hit over far more years of ownership. Third, and this is the one directly tied to everything we just walked through, have you separated the financing conversation from the price conversation? The single most effective thing you can do before you ever walk onto a lot is get pre-approved by your own bank or credit union first. It costs you nothing. It takes less time than people assume, and it means you're the one holding a number to compare against instead of the dealership being the only source of one. And fourth, how does this decision sit against everything else going on in your financial life? Your rent or your mortgage, what you're setting aside for savings and investing, the ordinary spending that makes life feel worth living. A car payment doesn't exist in isolation, and the right answer here changes depending on how much room the rest of your finances actually have. A car that technically fits your budget on a spreadsheet can still be the wrong car if it means you're constantly one unexpected expense away from feeling squeezed. The goal isn't just affording the payment, it's choosing a payment small enough that the rest of your financial life still has room to breathe. Run through those four honestly, and you'll make a far better decision than almost anyone else walking onto that lot today, most of whom are still only asking themselves one question, which is whether they can afford the payment. Every number in this video came from a real current rate environment, but your credit, your term, and your down payment will move these results, sometimes significantly. I built a tool for exactly this situation, one where you can drop in your own loan amount, your own quoted rate, and what you actually qualify for elsewhere, and see the real gap in dollars rather than guessing at it. It's part of the calculator vault, available to wealth logicians, along with every other tool built to run your own numbers instead of mine. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.